Hi dear friend, welcome in this week's IOC Daoland healthcare movie product, whatever you want to call it. We have, of course, every week we have another topic that we have a specialty program for, and usually these are historical subjects, or they are subjects that do relate directly with Chinese or Daoist medicine, or with Tai Chi Kung Fu, Neigong, Neidan, or cultural things that have to do with that. Doesn't really matter that much this week, though we are going to do it a little bit different. Namely, I sometimes get criticized for the fact that I am taking a position between spirituality and being a scientist. You see that in modern culture, people don't like to hear something that they don't agree with. As you can see, then now we have a lot of troubles in our society that are not really worth the trouble. And I have to explain some things about two different things, actually maybe three different things. That has to do with the Taoist perspective on things in general. And for this we have to ask ourselves a few questions. Maybe you don't know, but I was already interested in Taoism from when I was 15. I was studying Tai Chi Chuan, Qigong, no, not Tai Chi Chuan, but Qigong and yoga and meditation from about 11, when I was recovering from an operative procedure for my health. This is not the most important part. But that means that I'm already busy with it for a long time. At a certain point I went back to university, I went to study. I was a little bit of a failing student in the beginning because I was more interested in partying and being happy that I was alive, and anything that would make me excited would be very interesting, like for many other people. And as a result of that, I was very good at abusing my mind and my body and my feelings, and the unhappiness that resulted from it was always blamed on somebody else. And that is what Westerners in general do, but in all cultures in the world where people get into a similar kind of situation, they do the same. They basically blame other people for their problems because they don't understand themselves anymore. When you look at my career as a whole, I was always in doubt whether I should follow a spiritual path or a scientific path. Should I be a researcher, or should I just become like a hermit or a monk or something like this? And at a certain point, I was in a situation where I was in a retreat, I was in a cave, and I had this vision, that moment where I was basically being given the choice either to spend the rest of my life in the mountains and in the forests as a monk, hermit, or go back to society as a whole and do something with all the things that I learned, in the sense that I would become like an ambassador of what I have been studying. Not that my study is finished, because that is not. I'm not really great at anything that I do. I'm very average. I like to be as modest as possible about what I can, because from a scientific perspective and a spiritual perspective, both, you have to continuously agree with the reality that you're going to be wrong at one point or another in your life. And as a result of that, you can never make a statement like, this is how it is, but this is how I see it now, this is only what it can be. You can say sometimes that this is what it is not, right? And this is what I'm actually very good at, because I have been reading a lot, I've been meeting a lot of people, I've been talking with a lot of people from different traditions, done several anthropological studies with people from Aboriginal background in Australia, with Native American background in North and Middle America. South America, not so much. I've had some experience with tribal people from Africa, but also people from different countries, dictatorships and democracies from different countries, and how they were experiencing life and their social relationships, and also the role of things like witchcraft in their religion and so on. I've been teaching in China, in India, in Europe several places, quite a lot of places, and in America also, and in Mexico. And I'm very happy that I've been to all these places, because every time you realize when you come somewhere that your opinions are very relative. And I remember one moment that was, for me, was like a really big eye-opener, because at a certain point, following things that I learned from one of my teachers at university, Wouter Hanegraaf, teacher of Western esoterics, history of Western esoterics. He showed that different cultures in Europe, they have a sort of similarity, because the root of our cultures basically originates in the Greek hemisphere, where there were these island cultures that were continuously fighting with each other, and that this model of establishing borders and defending against external influences is basically the model of how Europe works. All European countries work like that. That's why we are always in war, and everybody who tried to unite us didn't really manage. Napoleon, Hitler, Caesar, well, you can mention a whole bunch of people actually who tried to do that. And now at this moment with the European Union, we have come the most far of everything. There's benefits of that, because, for instance, when we are united, we can share our wealth, and we can share our knowledge, and we don't have to continuously fight, so we don't have to break things down and build it up again, so that we do not make one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. Now we can gradually go forward in a particular way that helps us to grow as a culture as a whole. And we have, you have to say whatever you want, but we have a cultural history of 2,500 years, and we have to be proud of that, because there's other cultures in the world with a similar continuous line of development, and that is, for instance, the Chinese or the Indian culture, which are more or less similar in age, and they have a similar history with development of technology and art and all kinds of things, which are developing a sort of a parallel sphere, you can say. They have different things that they emphasize, like for instance in Indian culture, the spirituality, the aesthetics was very important. In the Western spirituality, your devotion to the divine was very important. And in Taoism, your ability to control yourself and to rise and transcend, so to say, into the realm of the deities is very important. So all the spiritualities are very different, and the worldview is also very different. The main binding force in the West is God, and in Islam and the West, this is the same, right? To me, Islam and Christianity is one religion. There's no three religions or anything like that. Islam, Christianity, and the Hebrew religion, they are like three branches of the same idea. And in India, in the spirituality, everything was being kept together by prana, which is a light, and in Chinese culture, everything was being kept together by Tao, and Tao has, at the moment when it is working out properly, has its qi, and the qi is a sign of the perfection of things. That means that things are exactly appropriate. They're not excellent, but they are appropriate, and that is basically it. So the Chinese culture is one culture that is also, because of its bureaucratic nature and its early unification, is one of ambiguity, one of vagueness sometimes, and not trying to be too excessive in things to make sure that safety is guaranteed. So it's not an adventurous society from all time. In this time, they're more like a Western country, so they do all kind of crazy stuff like we do. I will not say that it is bad, but I do not believe that following the Western way is the best thing to do for China in itself. And the best way for Europe also is not to follow that old-fashioned way. If they want to have unification, they will have to have a new model of thinking to be able to maintain that unity. And so far, European Union hasn't developed that. They are still in an infancy stage, and yeah, they could still, as a child, they can still die in the child birth thing. Anyway, what I wanted to start with is that I got criticized at a certain point by several people over time. Why do you always talk about things in a negative sense? I don't feel like do that, but I do point out sometimes, like, well, this reasoning is wrong because of this way and this way. I have to do that because as a scientist and as a person developed in Taoism as a whole, you have to learn to see the relativity of your own arguments, but also of other people's arguments, and especially in relationship to my students, or when people ask questions, or when they ask public questions, they ask you for your opinion, so you give your opinion, and at that moment when you underpin that opinion with some facts, then at that moment it might actually be an answer people don't really like, because our Western interpretation of Chinese culture and our modern Chinese interpretation of Chinese culture are based on certain, cultural fallacies. These things have become very much like the norm of things, but it doesn't mean that they're actually true. There are particular kind of things that in modern Chinese society cannot be discussed about Chinese culture for political reasons. Whether that is valid or not valid, I don't want to discuss that, because that is the choice of the Chinese people and the Chinese politics. And we are, as Westerners, we are basically excluded from the Chinese culture. They have created all kind of rules so that as a Westerner you can't become Chinese, and that is the same in Japan, in Korea, Vietnam, all these countries. So you're always going to be a little bit of an outsider in these cultures, and so this is their internal thing. We don't have that, right? We are an island culture. We have opened up our borders. We invited people to work for us, to work with us, to develop through us, so that we have a civilizing influence going on the outside world. The Chinese want that too. They want people to come, to study, and then go out and take Chinese ideas with them, because they see that it works. That's our European soft power. But the basic perspective of these kind of things is that your base of knowledge is relative. And what happens in our modern culture is that a lot of people, they feel that their experience of things is very true, purist, so to say. And as a result that you get a certain kind of radicalization of knowledge, and this radicalization of knowledge is based very often on false assumptions about what things are. For instance, I have a beef with the whole of Sinology and people who do translation of Chinese medicine, Taoist medicine, when they translate qi as energy. I also have a beef with people when they translate qi as air. And there are historical reasons for that. I will not go into that at this moment as an argument, but there are reasons to disagree with it, because these are interpretations caused by the trying to understand the concept of qi in Western language. It doesn't mean that not sometimes qi can mean energy, or sometimes it can mean air. It does sometimes, but that is not the general meaning of qi. Qi is related to Tao, and you have two kinds of qi. You have the qi that is going into things to keep things systemic working, and you have the qi of Tao, Tao qi. And that Tao qi is more like a natural emptiness, a voidness, an absence, you can say, which moves things. When we do the breath yoga, for instance, in our Daoland program, we are using that kind of qi, this emptiness we use on the inside, and that emptiness is also sometimes called Kong qi. And this Kong qi is then, of course, the qi is actually another kind of qi. And the qi that people usually recall as being the qi that everybody always talks about, the flag with the star below, the me character below, that one actually is then seen as a vapor coming from boiling rice, and that is then seen as an association of air, which is a stupid thought. Sorry to become so emotional about that, but it's a stupid thought, because it is rice that is boiling, it is vapor that is coming from the cooking of the water of the rice. So it is a gas, yes, that is right. It is a gaseous state of water, but not air, right? So you can't compare it with air. It is that if you heat up something, you can see there is an effect coming from it. That is basically what it is. That means that if you heat up your body, there's going to be an effect. You're going to have a fever, you're going to flush, and so on and so forth. So that is the qi of fire inside your body, that moment. At the moment when you cool down, then the qi of your body actually disappears. You feel very numb and dim, and you feel depressed maybe, or you feel at least enclosed within yourself, and there is not a urge to go outward. This is what you see with the leafy trees in the winter, when the winter comes, you see that they become basically numb and they go backwards, inward, they lose their leaves, they
look sad, you know, they look sad.
And at the moment when that happens, their cheek goes actually inward, and at the moment when it is inward, at that moment, they are in their winter state, their hibernating state, and at the moment when the spring comes, that means that the climate is changing again, and they warm up and they come outward and they start producing new leaves, flowers, you know, their sexual organs, and then babies, their fruits, at least if they cooperated properly with all different kind of billions of insects that are flying around, as long as we allow it through not too much poison in the air. This is basically it. So there's particular kind of ways of reasoning that people have. They are based on assumptions and translations that are sometimes true, but not always true, mostly not true actually. And as a result of that, almost everything people say is already on forehand not right. It's the same like when you do mathematics. You have mathematics that you need to do one calculation, another calculation, another calculation, another calculation. If the first one has a wrong answer, then all the other ones will be wrong too, right? It is just a matter of logical consequence. You can't say this is all right, but the first start is wrong. That means that the whole reasoning is like a slanted building, and at the moment when you reach a particular kind of height, it will fall over. This is a method that Trump used in his writing by exaggerating things, bringing things to their final conclusions. You can see how ridiculous things sometimes are. With a lot of arguments, I have a negative argument about it. I also don't get, as a result, that the chance to talk very much about people that I admire, because there's also people that I admire, and I wanted to add something about it. So I don't want to always explain this or that, because in spirituality you have to assume that you're wrong, and in science you're always going to be proven wrong sometime, and as a result of that you have to be prepared for that. So you can't feel insulted when somebody proves you wrong, and you can't be insulted by being wrong at the moment that your spiritual path proves to be a fallacy. Like for instance, when you start using weapons to prove that you are right. I mean, who wants to use a weapon? I mean, anybody with an open heart actually feels that hurting somebody is not a good thing.
Keep up the good work. You guys are doing great.
Basically what it means is that every time when you exchange information and you say something that other people do not agree with, yeah, sure, of course, it seems like very negative if you take it in an emotional way. If you just take it as an argument, then it is just an argument. So you can agree with it or not agree with it. If you don't agree with it, you counter it with a counter argument, and you don't feel like, you know, somebody is trying to repress your opinion. A opinion, and that is very important from a scientific and a spiritual perspective, just basically means you don't really know, because you don't really validate something with proof. If you don't give a proof for something, then it is not reasonable to accept that as an argument. So at the moment when you give an argument, you also have to underpin it with details so that people can understand what it is. When somebody does that and proves you wrong, that doesn't mean that somebody doesn't give you right to your opinion. You still have your right to your opinion. You also have a right to change your opinion when you are faced with facts which are actually underpinning something that you can follow, and you can go back to reason and to see what is right or not right. But there are also people that I really very much admire, and it's not just that I want to criticize people, because sometimes I admire people for their opinions. They really investigate. When you look at a lot of the fake news, you see if you go one layer deep and you go investigate where it comes from, you can already debunk it. Even as a layperson, you know, like, okay, this is just nonsense. It's just coming from some. So then there we go, as a last argument for this video today, to see also if we are going to make a follow-up. As a Daoist, or as an educator, as a scientist, I show in my argument ideas and material for you to think about, in case you do not have any real proven or provable facts on which you base your opinion. That is of course great, that is your own prerogative. The problem is though that there will always be people who are going to disagree with you because they did investigate things. And what a educator like myself, or a program maker like you, I'm also this role of course in this video, does is to create context. And from the context, you have to fabricate your own stories. You have to investigate what I say. You have to investigate what everybody says. You have to even investigate what you say, because you're responsible for what you say. You might have a freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is very important, I think. It is very important to be able to express yourself. But freedom of speech should not be limited. Like, for instance, there's no price on information. Information is free. The way how you present information, that might be chargeable. Like in this case, this is a video series. You can become a member. Some videos I offer for free. Some videos you have to join to study that. At the moment when you enter a tradition, that is a scientific tradition or a spiritual tradition or anything like that, it is normal that you contribute to that tradition one way or the other, whether it's financial or through action or to doing things and so on and so on, because you have a shared conviction, and this shared conviction leads to shared action and cooperation and so on and so forth. Healthcare is a very nice example, because my thing is healthcare, of course, from an alternative perspective, and then specifically from a Chinese medicine or Daoist medicine perspective, where the holist nature of humanity as a whole and the world as a whole plays a role in how healthcare should be organized, and it should not be focused on the solving of individual problems only, but also on social problems and on our own personal responsibility on what we can do ourselves to make things better for the whole and for ourselves, of course, also at the same time. What I do in that perspective is showing arguments and facts and context through which you can weave your own opinion. When you get into a tradition, you are going to be part of a particular kind of way of arguing. And it means that you have to learn to absorb your own arguing. What I had to learn as a Taoist, and what you also have to learn as a scientist, is to suspend your own opinion so that you can learn an argument. At the moment when you have an opinion, you're not really part of anything. And it is nice to be free and not bound to anything, of course. But that doesn't mean that your freedom of speech doesn't force you to also take responsibility for what you say. That means that if somebody proves you wrong, you could try to accept other people's argument for what it is, and at that moment say like, well, actually I have to think about that, because I actually only have an opinion. I don't really know anything. So there we go. I look forward to see you in the next video. Behind this video you get some information how you can sponsor these videos, and I look forward to also have discussions with you. I have my own opinions, of course, also, which I keep for myself. I try to be as much truthful to the program that the Daoland program has. That means that as an educator, as a maker of these movies, this is not about me, this is about the information that I share. That means that, well, I'm just a nobody.
Watching that. At 1 minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 17, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 25, 28. Oké, Palas. Klaar?
No, this is who stays the longest.
Oh, oké.